So Krishna has said he is doing his duties and setting a good example in the human form, although he is the creator himself. And asks Arjuna, all of us, to do our duties so that we will be good mentors. As I was reading this, a thought came to me about who was I as a junior, as a youngster. If when I was young, in my 20s, 30s, and 40s, someone had said to me, do your duties, do your services as sacrifice without expecting anything in return, no rewards, I would have laughed at that person. And then if the person had added, well, that's what the Bhagavad Gita says, I would have probably smiled or argued, changed the topic, and thought, I don't know why he's reading the Bhagavad Gita. That brings back an event that occurred in my life, and just to express how my attitude was when I was younger. So, in the 80s, Hare Krishna movement was big. ISKCON was had just become very big right after the hippie days. They used to hand out Bhagavad Gita copies, their version of it, which is excellent. So I was, in fact, touring Washington, D.C., and I met a bunch of saffron-clad people with shaven head giving out copies of Bhagavad Gita and going, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna. Passers-by would ignore them, but I stopped, took a copy, and that was sitting in my apartment for a long time. But one day when I was solving homework problems with the door of my apartment open, feeling the breeze in Tallahassee, Florida, a young man in his teens, excellently clothed in his suit and tie, stopped by and knocked on my door and said, could I bother you for a minute? I said, sure, what do you have to say? And he started describing the glory of Jesus and the Bible and his philosophy. And he said, so I would like you to read this Bible, a copy of my Bible. I will come back in a week. We can discuss it, and I'll take back the copy. I said, sure, I will do that for you, but 1 second, and I got up, went and picked up the copy of the Bhagavad Gita that has been sitting there, never opened. Took it and handed it to him, and I said, in return, you need to read the Bhagavad Gita. This is the Hindu philosophy, and we will exchange notes. He was quite unhappy about it. He said he did not accept the Bhagavad Gita, picked up the Bible, and walked away. I smiled and put the Bhagavad Gita in the same place, and it was sitting there for many years to follow. Anybody who knew me as a youngster would ask me now, or would sort of be wondering, what is he doing? Why is he all of a sudden interested in the Bhagavad Gita? And that is the common attitude as a youngster. But things changed. You grow. You figure out that the success and failures, material goods, happiness, sorrow, good food, indigestion, all of that is somewhat mundane. There has got to be something more. What is it? You struggle. Of course, you can't find the answer. You go to the scriptures. I picked up the Bhagavad Gita. Luckily, I had a wonderful version of the Bhagavad Gita, the copy that I opened. It's in Tamil. And it struck a chord quite deeply and seemed to have messages or ideas that made sense, that were quite logical. But then it was difficult to read through it. It's deep philosophy, very hard. It's not a storybook. So I decided that the exercise I go through and I have experienced in my teaching, which is every time I teach a class, even if I teach the same course over and over again, I learn something new. So I decided the best way to know what is in the Bhagavad Gita is try to explain to somebody. And that is how I first went through writing it. Now I'm going through saying it. And every time I hear what I'm saying, I know I missed a bunch. There is a lot more. So this process, I hope, can get me to where, or get me closer to where I want to eventually end up. But then why am I saying all these things now? In fact, the next two verses, verses 25 and 26, talk about it. Common man, when they are young especially, always work for rewards. That's the motivating factor for them. But only those with wisdom know better. Therefore, it is important, or it behooves us with some wisdom to impart that knowledge and try to convince, or not necessarily convince, try to inculcate some of the philosophy that we have learned, and in this case, that if you enjoy your job, you're going to feel better even if it doesn't pay well. You need to enjoy what you do, and do your duty.